Hey, we're back on the podcast with Mr. Greg Nutter, who is a management consultant, and he helps business owners and senior sales executives solve revenue growth problems through direct, indirect, or multi-channel sales models. He's also the author of the Amazon best-selling book, P3 Selling, The Essentials of B2B Sales Success. So we're going to find out today about these sales methodologies, how we can give marketers who are looking to improve their ability to support sales some guidance on doing that, and some trends on the world of B2B selling. So here he comes, Mr. Greg Nutter. Hey, Mr. Greg, we pumped everyone up. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Robert. Great to be here.
Great to have you. And I will remember you forever because we've been talking on LinkedIn for about 3 years, and you're one of the first people I kind of contacted from like sort of a sales sequence, trying to find authors who need audiobooks. And then since coming across you, I've made a couple of hundred audiobook sales. And recently I circled back and you were like, hey, I went with someone else with an audiobook. You should have been more persistent. You should have followed up more. So now I'm like, okay, so until I get a no, I need to like follow up and because we're all busy. But that aside, kind of the context of how we know each other, what are you all about? What makes you stand out?
Yeah, so just to finish off on your comment is that, things change. People evolve, their needs evolve, and it's that regular touching in, and sometimes you catch somebody that, now I have a problem. So a little bit about me. I'm a little unique in a couple of ways. One is I'm a career seller. I've been selling technologies for 30 years or so or more. I've been a sales rep, sales manager, vice president of sales, worked for large companies and small companies, and also spent a lot of time in channel partner management, managing resellers, distributors, etc. But more than just having done the job, I've also been a sales trainer and developed training content for people on how to do a better job selling. So that's helped me see what works and what doesn't work. And then lastly, I've been a sales performance consultant. So that's working with big companies, SAP, Hewlett Packard, Microsoft, NCR, done projects for Michelin Tire and Carrier, air conditioning, et cetera. And so I've got to see a lot of what companies do, what they do well, what they don't do well, particularly when it comes to scaling sales capabilities.
Wonderful. And so I'm always curious about having a sales guy on the podcast because everyone has their own unique flavor. People have different things to say, like you're a B2B guy, it sounds like, and there's a lot of these large transactions. I can't even imagine what like a sale to carrier would be like. And so you always hear all these things of like, do enough of the numbers, right? Do enough output and get rapport and follow up and talk to the decision maker and ask about their needs. But what's your take on sales? Like when there's some kind of sales team to be trained, where do you see the dysfunction or where do they come to you for help?
Well, there's some misconceptions around what is selling, right? And a lot of it comes from the selling we see in our normal day-to-day life is consumer selling, right? I'm trying to sell you a stereo, a car, whatever. And that process is very different than selling to companies. Business to consumer selling is talking a lot about your product, why it's great. We've got a sale this month. Can I put some fries with that, right?
Sure.
The old upsell, cross-sell. But B2B selling is very different. B2B selling plays out over a long period of time with a lot of different people, a lot of different steps. People have a lot of different ideas and perspectives of what the right solution needs to look like. And so when we apply B2C selling, which is kind of like you described there, let's just make more calls, be a nice guy, take him for lunch once in a while, right? And you'll get the deal. That works in B2C selling. Doesn't work very well in B2B. So the key element is having a process, a roadmap of where are we in this selling process or buying process, and then based on that, what should I be doing? And it's not always taking someone to lunch, telling them about my product, telling them about the sale that's coming up, right? Those things actually don't always work in your favor. So it's understanding the success factors more clearly, um, that are different in a B2B selling environment.
That's logical. That makes sense. So it's like the map is different from B2C versus B2B, and you say, well, where is this person along, and based on where they are on the map, what should I do? And like, what might that look like? Like, is that like, I'm 5 months in, it's phone call number 12. Like, what does it look like as far as like where this contact is and what action I should take?
You raise a great question. A lot of companies have standardized selling processes, right? You pick up the phone, you call somebody, you ask them if they have any needs. They say, tell me more. And then you do a discovery call. You find out a little bit about them. Then maybe you do a little bit of qualification. Is this the right person? Do they have money? So you go through this sales process. Then you quote, or maybe you do a demonstration, or you give them a sample. Then you come up with a proposal and you ask for the deal. The problem with that is that's a selling process. And the key to success is not following the selling process. It's following the buying process. Companies and individuals make, big buying decisions, investments in the same way. They go through 4 key stages. They start with asking the question, do I have a problem? Is it worth fixing? How big is it? What would it cost me if I don't fix it? And until they go through that and get their head around that, they don't start anything else. Once they do say, you know what, I should look at fixing this, then they start looking at options. They look at what information is out there. What have other people done? What ballpark might this cost us to do? And then they go through an evaluation process. So they take the information, they start sifting through and figuring out the best next steps, and then they come down to a decision. So what you do as a seller is entirely dependent on where the company and that person is in their buying decision. So if they are at the first stage and they haven't even figured out if this problem is big enough worth solving, the worst thing you could do is send them a proposal, right?
Yeah.
And I have a lot of sales managers say, oh, our people aren't that stupid. Well, I've seen it quite a bit, right? It's like, well, let's just send them a proposal. Okay, we'll send them a proposal. Let's do a demo. Let's do something. Um, when really they need to be going back and influencing people on the merits of moving to the next stage, which is gathering information.
I like that. And I know like you and me, we're dancing around different examples, right? And it's easy to kind of flip around B2B and B2C because you're using different examples. But when you mentioned that, like two things came to mind. One is a bunch of years ago, like 15 years ago, I went into, I think it was like a Sleep Number mattress store, and the salespeople were like all dressed in pajamas. And I was just looking, and they were like $3,000 beds. And I was just like looking around, and the guy was kind of, being a salesperson. And I was like, I was trying to kind of like poke and prod and kind of dabble and like ask different questions. And he was a little firm with me. He's like, I have to do this in this order. And then I sort of cracked the door and let him in. And he brought me through this whole process and like laying on the bed and trying out the pillows. And I ended up buying a $3,000 bed, not even realizing what the heck happened because like he didn't let me take over control of the process, and he kind of slowly like incremented me through all these different kind of steps. And after a while, I was like, man, he's done all this. Like it's rude to stop him now. And then that comes to mind. And then like your logic here reminds me of like they say there's the 5 stages of awareness, right? There's like, I don't even know I have a problem. Then I'm solution aware. Then I'm product unaware and product aware and all these kind of steps. And I find that very helpful as far as making the content and making the marketing and doing the follow-ups, because I'm like, okay, I'm just warming the person up. I'm just getting them to the next stage. And it makes a lot of sense how if we kind of try to jump to the end in a lot of different contexts, that we might lose them because they're not even there yet. But versus if we said, hey, I just want to get you to like the next thing of like knowing you have a problem, looking at the possible solutions, knowing like what that could be. And so how do we approach that without being too much of a nice guy? Because there's that other fear of like, well, if I don't even ask for the sale or ask for the sale too late, you can drive yourself crazy saying like, well, now I'm not being pushy enough. So what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I think a couple things. First off, I think you raised a great point that the customer is not always right. um, that a lot of customers are buying products and services for the first time, and it's kind of arrogant of them to think, I know how to make this decision, right? Um, which is what a lot of purchasing, you know, uh, organizations do. We know how to make this decision. Um, but I think if you're a good seller, particularly in a B2B environment or even the B2C that you talked about, is that you need to be the expert on the buying process. So if somebody gives you some pushback, like you gave to the guy at a mattress store, you'd say, hey, Robert, I understand your concerns, and we've had a lot of people who've raised that concern. But let me tell you, if we follow this process, you're going to end up with the best solution. You're going to end up with the best thing. So you tell them why you're doing it and what's in it for them. And most times people say, okay, let's follow that for a little while. Um, I often get asked, what's the best role for a seller to play, in front of to the prospect? And a lot of people say, well, I'm the relationship manager. I'm the guy there between our company. I'm there to, you know, um, find out their needs and to position our stuff in front of them. Other people say, no, I'm the product expert. I'm the guy who knows our product the best and can tell them how to apply it. And I say, no, those are all secondary. The primary role of a top-notch B2B seller is to be an expert on the buying process. Exactly what you described in your experience at the store is that um, here's the kinds of problems we solve. Here's the impact. Here's generally what it costs companies if they don't solve them. You agree you need to solve it? Okay, the next stage. This is the kind of information that a lot of people need in order to feel comfortable moving forward. You suggest this. Then here's a decision criteria, that people often use. So you suggest along the way how to make a good buying decision. And that's, to me, the most powerful role you can play as a B2B seller.
That is a cool way of looking at it. Like when you're saying that, the visual that comes to mind is like when you look at the inside of a lock and all these like cylinders or tumblers or whatever, like they have to all be in position in order for the lock to turn. And so when we're trying to just ask for that sale and we don't have all of these like, key pieces in place beforehand, like of course it doesn't work. And it's I don't know, like when like I said, I met you on LinkedIn, and the last few years, I've kind of had a lot of fun just getting the sales muscle figured out. And even with like my wife, she goes after audiobook people as well, and we sort of see the same patterns. And so it's a fun game to be played. It changes from a source of social anxiety into it's almost like dancing or dating or flirting. It's like you kind of play a back and forth with a person, and then and sometimes there's something like where I get kind of strung along by that prospect, right? They say, oh, well, I buy if only this, only this. And I feel like that's more of they're trying to like rip me away from that process. And I end up saying something like, well, if this objection was handled, would you buy? And so, and I found that to be helpful because sometimes it gets them to kind of show their true colors, right? We've gone through all this process and it's like, okay, like, and I used to make the mistake of just giving that thing to them and then they say, oh, but can I get thing number 2? Can I get thing number 3? And instead I'm just like doing that extra little nuance of like, okay, is that it? If I give this to you, will it be a yes or a no? And so along those lines, do you see like a key mistake or a key like tweak that we could be making to our sales process just so that way it's more like thought through in some of these ways you describe?
Some of the things you talked about there are negotiations. A lot of that happens near the end. You use a great word I liked earlier called dancing. In fact, I use that in my book. Um, And I say, dancing requires two people. And you always need to be looking to see if you're dancing by yourself, right? And the litmus test is the other person doing something tangible to move the deal forward? Now, you know what the buying process should look like. Are they engaging other people? Are they giving you the information you need? Are they um, helping to develop criteria, right? Depending on where they are. So if they're not doing those things over a certain amount of time, and I describe how to, calculate that time, then you need to come to the reality that you're dancing with yourself and you could spend your time better elsewhere, right? So, hey, I'd love
Yeah.
to work with you, Robert. You're a great guy, but um, I don't feel that you're really at the right position for us to, I don't know, enter into this discussion. Um, Now, if you are in a negotiations and someone is real, then you could pose another question like, hey, let's get all the things that you need right now to finalize this decision. So that happens in the final stage, the fourth stage of a buying decision, called the purchase decision stage. So what are all the things? And you actually build a bit of a project plan. Um, you'll sit down and say, okay, what are all the things our company needs to do? What are all the things your company needs to do? Let's make a list of them. How long are they going to take? Who needs to do that? And then we manage it like a project manager. Okay, when do you think you'll get those things done? When do you think you'll give me all the pieces that you need? Right? And if somebody really has a problem that you've identified, it's really key that they solve it, then they'll work with you to build and execute that project plan. That's a key thing that you build in the final stages of a buying decision.
Well, the project plan sounds great because I know, like early on, I made the mistake of information dumping, of saying like, "Oh, we could do this, we could do this," and just end up overwhelming the person, and then and at the same time, like giving too much away and making them feel like they could do the thing themselves instead of me doing it. But then the end result being no one ends up doing it, and it just creates a mess. So I like the
Yeah.
you're dancing with yourself, and instead work with them and create a plan, and it almost feels like it's like they need to also step up, right? And they need to deliver for you, and you're kind of more working together. It's more like teamwork. And so in the spirit of us getting a little bit of education and getting motivated to check out your excellent book, which is P3 Selling, my understanding is that the three P's are problem, people, and processes. But you tell me, what is P3 selling all about, and how does it stand out from all the millions of other sales trainings out there?
Well, a couple of things. So, if you ask yourself, what is selling, particularly B2B selling, it's not the outcome, which is, hey, I want people to buy my stuff, right? It's what do you do? And there's three key behaviors. One is understanding situation and perspectives of your prospect. Second one is influencing them on those perspectives, influencing them. Hey, this really is a big problem. Hey, you really should have somebody else manage this. Hey, you really need to have somebody with, you know, references, 5 references in your industry, right? And then finally, it's messaging. It's so understanding, influencing where you can, and then messaging back based on what they've said they need. So if you ask the question is, okay, where do I focus those three behaviors? Understanding, influencing, and messaging. There are three key areas. One is around problems or opportunities. So what problems do they have? Which are important, which are urgent, and how would you quantify them? Put a dollar figure on that. The second area is around people. What kind of people are impacted by those problems or benefit if you solve those opportunities? Um, who has the greatest influence in a buying decision, right? And what are their perceptions of solving it? And the last area is around buying process. So process, but that's we made a distinction earlier as we focus on the buying decision process, not a selling process. So where are they? Where's the client? And you're going to find you're going to have individuals that'll be at different stages. You'll have maybe one person if it's a big company who's ready to sign, and you'll have somebody else who said, no, 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 let's talk to marketing first, Robert. They need to weigh in, right? So they're in different places. So you need to know where the company and individuals are And based on that, how are you positioned? And lastly, what should you be doing? What are the best actions? As I said before, when somebody hasn't decided on to buy, giving them a proposal is the worst thing you could do. If they're all ready to put pen to paper and you say, oh, you know what? We've got a neat new upgrade coming out next month, a new product, a new feature, right? They go, oh, maybe I better wait till I hear that. So you do things in alignment with the buying process. And those are the three themes. We focus on problems, people have the problems, and the buying decision process.
And it seems like the end result is that there's more empathy, right? That instead of you just like kind of trying to force this cookie cutter process, you're just like, hey, well, where are they at? And I don't know B2B sales that well, but from like having podcast guests like you, it sounds like a lot of fun as far as like the strategy, right? And like working on something for many months and kind of like working on different parts of the organization and the key decision makers and saying like, well, I need to like send this letter at this point and move them along. Like it seems like a big problem to solve but a high reward if we can get that high ticket sale, even though I know you're saying a lot of like, oh, it's not all about the sale, but it is cool to get some
Or it is a
results, right?
sale.
To meet some objectives, get some goals. And so in these last few minutes here, I want to make sure that we work a story in, because podcasting is fun to talk about stories, especially where like if either you or a client was really having trouble and you like put a creative spin on things and ended up with a successful resolution. So what comes to mind for you as far as some fun kind of in the trenches sales stories?
Um, there are lots. I'll give you one that is going to sound a little manipulative, but it's it's like knowing what the customer wants before you tell them what you think they want. Long time ago, I went in to see I was selling to a large technology company, and I went with my boss, and they were having some problems, and we said, okay, we're going to give them a really good deal. We're going to really cut the price. They're going to love this. We're going to give them all this free stuff. So we go in there and we're talking to him, and he said, we really like to move this sale forward. And we open our binder. We're about to tell him what we put together, and he stands up. He says, "Wait." He goes to the whiteboard and he goes, "So this is what you've cost me. This is the problems I've had. Blah 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 blah." And he writes a number. He says, "This is what I'm prepared to pay." My boss and I, our jaws dropped. It was like about twice of what we were going to offer. So we
Nice.
quickly get into the binder and put it away and stuff. All right, that's a tough bargain. I think we can do it. So I don't want to sound like a sneaky salesperson there. It could have been anything else, but he had in his mind a, a perspective of what would work for him. And our mistake is we didn't ask that, kind of like, you know, we just guessed. And when you guess, you can either, come in with a really low value that we would have made no money on, or you know, could lose a deal. So I think it's really important to kind of understand the perspectives before you message. What do they want? What are their perspectives around the problem? What are their perspectives on the people that need to be involved? What are their perspectives on the buying decision process? And then you message back. And if they've got something that's like really bad, like, wow, um, we don't buy from companies that don't accept our contract, and your boss isn't going to accept that, then you need to know that up front, and that's when you go into influencing, right? Where you need to influence them to see that that isn't in their best interest. And we have a methodical process that describes how you do that.
Ooh, okay. So understanding, influencing, and messaging. And if right out of the gate, if what they want makes sense, then why fight it? Or if something needs to be changed, then work on that. And it seems like I think there's a key life lesson in this, that listening and understanding is really important. I don't know about you, Greg, but I know when I was a kid, I always I always thought I was right. And I thought that if I prove someone else wrong, they would be impressed with me. And it's like the opposite is true, right? If you repeat something back to someone that they value, they say, "Oh, this person is smart," and and there's definitely value in listening and understanding and being willing to be wrong and just kind of tuning into what someone else wants instead of you saying, "Well, you don't know what you're talking about. I'll just be so arrogant and I'll tell you what how it should be." And there's definitely like you won't make a lot of friends in this life if you do that. And so it's interesting and fun to think about all this negotiating stuff and the people skills and just kind of massaging a situation into getting this outcome that we want. And if we try to go it on our own, then we'll be stuck in this really limited thinking. And so we need some of these perspectives, such as what you're sharing here today, especially by checking out your excellent book, which is called P3 Selling: The Essentials of B2B Sales Success. So, can you tell us why we should run, not walk, to go and claim the book P3 Selling?
Um, if you look at sales training, um, you know, the books that are in sales training, what's been out there, you know, um, a lot of them are old. People are still quoting Zig Ziglar and Brian Tracy. Zig Ziglar's book came out in what, 1974. Brian Tracy, 1988. Even, strategic selling, which everybody talks about in B2B, is 1985. These things are 30 to 50 years old. You and I, well, maybe I wasn't born, or you weren't born back then,
Barely
but these are
born.
old things, right? And so there has been some updates to selling. So P3 selling is simple. Understand there's no embedded jargon. My post, I had a post this week that, Robert, you chimed in on, where somebody who had bought the book just recently said, highly recommended. So it's based on research on how people make buying decisions. It's not, here's how you should sell. It's here how people make buying, and here's how you align to it. It's comprehensive. It has sales strategies, tactics, and processes, and some tools. And finally, it's a methodology that sales managers can use to coach and manage their team, right? So it's all-encompassing package that people can use to really up their game in selling.
Very nice. So it's perfect for that person that's frustrated with the outdated 70s and 80s sales training, which is a great start. But well, hey, things have changed, right? If you've been to a retail store recently, right? People don't buy there. They do the showrooming. They see what there is and then use their phone. There's a lot of like following up and ads following you around. So like a lot of things about the world have changed in the past 50 years for sure. And it seems like there's a lot of like people wanting to be perhaps more educated and having more choices. And there's so much in the way that things are done now. And I like what you said there of how P3 selling even applies to someone if they want to train their sales team to do a better job. And so as far as taking next steps with you, Mr. Greg Nutter, is P3 selling the only thing to check out, or are there some other resources someone should go to?
If you check out P3 Selling, you can find it on almost any online bookstore, Amazon. It's available in ebook. You can get it on iTunes. There's an Audible or Apple Play version of it. So if you like listening to books in the car, it's available in any format. Um, if you go to p3selling.com and register, you'll get a link so you can download all the tools and templates that we talk about in the book, all free. And I won't I won't bug you with emails every other day to get you to buy something else. So it's comprehensive. The last thing is that some companies like a hands-on approach. So we run a workshop, a 2-day workshop, where we come in and train people on how to apply the concepts in their world. And there's a post I did, I think, a week or two ago on LinkedIn, where the owner of a company sent a note back and said, since you came in and showed our team how to, follow the P3 selling processes, our business has doubled. He said, and he has no doubt that it's related to the training we did. So, lastly, go on Amazon and look at the reviews. as you know, Robert, getting a review is hard. But there's
Yes.
over 100 reviews of people who have read the book, verified purchasers who will tell you what they think. So don't listen to me. Go check it out. And if you're looking to do something, if what you're doing isn't getting what you want, then there's an option for some ideas on how to change it.
It's time for a different perspective, to use your word, if what you're currently doing isn't working. And so those are some great resources you mentioned. That's on LinkedIn. Search Greg Nutter. If you find the one in San Diego, you're at the right place, where he makes those excellent posts. And then we said p3selling.com is where we can get to that website. And there's all sorts of different podcast appearances, and you can find out about that 2-day workshop. And then we said on Amazon and Audible and iTunes, etc., P3 Selling, the Essentials of B2B Sales Success. Now, this is a book where you can navigate today's complex B2B environment with confidence as you win more deals, receive more referrals, make more money, and advance your way up the corporate ladder. We want all those things, right? You never hear anyone saying, oh, I want 1 out of 4. No, you want all of those things. And it doesn't make any sense to do it the hard way. Get the training that you need to figure out what you're doing wrong. I do that all the time. Like, oh my gosh, this thing Greg pointed out, I can't believe I was doing that. Now you know not to do it. So P3 Selling on Amazon and wherever books are sold. And before I let you go, Mr. Greg, it's time for the scary part of the show, where I try to put you on the spot, stump you, and I ask for a fun quote or lesson that has served you in life or in business that you can pass on to us. So what comes to mind for you as far as a fun quote or lesson?
Can I use 2?
Go for it. Double
All
duty.
right. All right. The first one really echoes a lot of what we've been talking about today, Robert. And it's in my book, and I use it all the time. And the quote is, I don't know where I got it, but I say it all the time, is I don't know what I'm selling until I know what you're buying. People buy different things. They buy everything from I want to go home early to this is too much hassle to I want to get promoted. And once you understand what they want to buy, then you take your product and you present it in such a fashion that it meets those needs. Companies don't buy products. They don't buy services. They buy solutions to problems or a way to capture opportunities. So until you know what those are, you don't know what you're selling. The last one, to sum up our last little conversation, is from the late, great Joan Rivers. And Joan said, I wish you could tell you it gets better, but it doesn't get better. You get better. So I'll leave that with you as maybe some guidance in selling and some guidance on how maybe you take your sales career forward.
That's 2 pieces of very wise advice. And as we're digesting that, pondering it, thinking it over, go to p3selling.com. Check out P3 Selling, the Essentials of B2B Sales Success. Mr. Greg Nutter, it's been a blast and a pleasure speaking with you.
Thanks, Robert. I really appreciate it.
All right.